Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. And also, it's a pleasure for me to share the stage with Mike. Mike, thank you so much for being here and having this session with me today and with all of us.
Oh, thanks for having us. Thank you guys for hanging around.
So thank you very much once again for being here. So today we are going to have fun, interesting conversations at the intersections of several topics. We will be touching on culture in sports, building audiences globally and locally, but also new tech, trends, and content strategy. So maybe let's jump straight into it. So let's start with something which is very recent for you. So we have been seeing a lot of collaborations between sports entities and non-sports entities, from fashion, gaming, and even with NASA in your case. So how did you come up with that? So is this something effective in building fan engagement and brand loyalty towards Juventus? How did you find that?
Yeah, so first, if anyone at the back can't hear, just throw your arm up or throw something towards the front. Just want to make sure you guys can hear through the mic. I think the crossover from football transcending outside of sport is something that happens quite easily. I think a lot of football clubs are looking at how they capture attention in this very competitive media landscape. And so these crossovers that happen outside of sport make a whole lot of sense. As someone who spent a lot of years in consumer packaged goods, I'd say, generally speaking, sports clubs don't have large marketing budgets to invest to grow. And so collaborations are very efficient ways to get scale outside of the club. Typically from a metrics perspective, they're used to attract new audiences. So you might partner with a fashion brand or a music brand to essentially bring in new audiences to signal to the audience who you are, or maybe you're using it as a brand play to reinforce what your company is and what it stands for. And so maybe that's fashionable or trendy or Italian or cool. But I think those are generally the reasons that we see football clubs, as well as Juventus, look to partner with brands outside of football. For us, the Nassau one was recent, and it was a fit because we launched our home jersey with a space theme with the moon kind of engraved into the back of the home jersey. We wanted to continue our global expansion. We saw Nassau as a brand that was quite recognized globally, that had a good reputation, that was kind of topical, especially with Elon Musk talking about space a lot these days, and there was a good fit there. And so that collab specifically did quite well for us. The main item, the jacket, sold out near immediately, and the feedback has been positive. So we've been fortunate in how that one worked out.
So yeah, that was key to, in order to be relevant at the right time, at the right place, by also navigating what was trending at that specific moment in time. So being there is very crucial to increase fan engagement. Fan engagement in general is a very relevant topic nowadays, as you said, to be competitive into a very dynamic media landscape. So as we go more into that topic, I'd like to have a look at a video first that is introducing this even better.
All right, here's the point. Why not do things differently? We just changed the rules of the game.
This is crazy, guys!
Like building the Juventus Creator Lab, bringing an original to the Venice Film Festival, or hosting the World Freestyle Football Championship, creating an animated series for kids, partnering with TikTok as a jersey sponsor, becoming the most watched content on Prime Video. And, oh yes,
Here we go, baby!
pioneering a new model for match broadcast. But it's not just about what we've done.
Let's move on.
It's about what's to come. Because the only question here is, why not?
So yeah, this is a very great example of fan engagement, and the Creator Lab has been one of your flagship initiatives. And At Cosmic, we work every day with creators. So I'm very curious about this happening in the football industry as well. How did you come with this need, with this idea of building the Creator Lab? And in your opinion, what is the impact that this is having on fan engagement and your audiences?
Yeah, so first, I guess a couple years ago, we started by looking internally. We did a lot of research. We wanted to listen to our fans worldwide. We looked at our digital footprint, and while I know folks in the room know who Juventus is, maybe you don't know, our digital fan base is 180 million across social media. It's around 94% outside of Italy. It's roughly 40% under the age of 24, and it's scattered all over the planet. And so first looking internally as a team, we asked ourselves, are we building the right engagement models and content models to adhere to the needs of that really fragmented, very young audience base? And so that's the first starting point. Then in a lot of our research, we saw some interesting headlines jump out. One was this evolution of fandom and how young people define fandom and their consumption habits changing. Another was we saw broadcast sometimes was tough to reach, depending on where you are in the world, even if it's there. Or young audiences wanted shorter highlights and just weren't into the full 90 minutes. And so we saw this other headline come out of our research showing the importance and the expansion of this post 90 minutes throughout the week. We saw kids were choosing football clubs and sports organizations for different reasons, and so they were choosing a club based on content, based on players, based on influencers, actually over their family and their friends. Where in the past it was like if your mom or your dad's supporting a club, you're in trouble if you don't follow what your parents are doing, and so that had changed as well too. And so for all of those reasons, both looking at our audience and how it's broken out across the globe, and then seeing these insights in the research, we realized that like we needed to try to challenge convention, ask ourselves, I mean, why not as an internal rally cry, but like why not try something different? Why not test out a new model? Why not try new things to try to engage that audience that we have that's spread out all over the world? And so, so far, I'd say the numbers are working well for us. I mean, we track everything, but they're working both on the media side as well from a commercial point of view. It's very helpful for our partners, our sponsors, and really delivering what they need as well too.
Exactly. No, this is crucial. And you also mentioned the complexity, the increasing complexity of generating these new contents to reach these new audiences with new habits, new ways of connecting with them. So, for example, in the video, we also saw a lot of vertical formats. We saw the partnership with TikTok, so this rise of new short video format in general. So the question here will be for you at Juventus, how do you balance this quick turnaround, being there with short, snakeable contents, but at the same time, make sure that you are also telling a long story, more complex story to your fans? How do you balance that?
So the honest answer is, lucky for me, we've got a fantastic team that is responsible for the channel distribution strategies. They are ninjas, and really the way we've structured the team is special teams experts. So generalists across social media is something that was easier to do in the past. Maybe some of you have experienced this. More and more now we see it as really having special teams experts across each of those channels. And so for us, the notion of the Creator Lab, and the reason we chose those words is because we wanted to actually not see creators as a threat or a competition to what we were doing, but embrace that. And so internally we've built teams that work across each channels. They're often content creators or influencers themselves. And so they can answer the choice of whether it needs to be short or be long based on the platform. I mean, we've all seen in the past few years, platforms are getting tougher to work within because you need short, you need mid, you need long form, in some cases in the exact same platform. And so really for us, our strategy was build special teams, like vertical experts that really know the platform well, and let them decide on what the length of the content needs to be. what I would say is I think we've all seen that you can have really short content that hits hard and that people remember, and you can have really long content that's exceptionally boring as hell and misses the point. And so I wouldn't say that like one is necessarily better than the other. What we see is like short can be a way to bring new people in, and then long, generally speaking, will reward people once they've signaled that they have interest. From a content production perspective, the team has to work a lot harder now than they did a few years ago, both on the quantity and also just the speed at which we have to bring stuff to market. And so I would say our frequency has gone up a lot. I mean, we're delivering, 1,500 pieces of content a week. And so our numbers have gone up quite a bit. Not to get too nerdy on the subject, and you would know this better than me, but there's been enough studies that show that because of the influx of content on all these platforms, that really numbers and frequency does matter, and so that's something that we do track on a regular basis.
And a lot of trial and error, trying to
Absolutely.
Exactly really learn from what happens and then adapt consequentially to it. And this is definitely a landscape where you have to stay open and really understand what happens and be innovative with it. So, and you are right in that direction with other initiatives like Juventus Forward, for example. So based on that sort of incubator you're working with, which are the major trends or tech that you see establishing in the market?
Sure. So just a quick background for those if you don't know. Juventus Forward is a new department that we've launched in the last 2 years. Really, it was built for two main reasons. One, to help streamline innovation. Probably you've read, and certainly I have, that innovation and the speed of change is just so fast that companies aren't able to keep up with what's out there. And so often you need a funnel, so to speak, or you need a channel to help make innovation inside companies easier. I know I'm approached and my team's approached on a daily basis by an incredible amount of new potential opportunities, but also having someone that can help you understand like what's a good opportunity versus not. And so the department's really there to help make innovation simpler. That's one piece, but not be the dictator of innovation. And then the other is the football business needs to find new commercial revenue streams, and they need to diversify. And so it was built to have a long-term objective of coming up with new revenue streams that can help us be stronger economically. I'd say, without having a crystal ball, where we're bullish is, I'd say new environments is one, and so looking at gaming, virtual, augmented, but like new environments, the category. The other, while it's a massive buzzword that probably we'll hear today and tomorrow, is Gen AI, and so it's helping us a lot right now. I mean, whether it's for dubbing or clipping or content creation, I mean, we're using it in a lot of different ways, and we have been for about 1.5 years, 2 years. So I'm excited to see where Gen AI takes us and kind of what comes from that. And then maybe the third is loyalty, like loyalty products. I think football clubs and sports organizations are very good on the B2B side, but as B2C companies, there's lots of opportunity. For us, like we've got 90+% of our fans that are outside, and so if we can build like more great products to allow for our fans around the world to connect with us, there's a great opportunity there. And so those would be the areas that I'd say we should look out for.
And I guess, Mike, that this B2C point is particularly interesting nowadays, right? Because at the end of the day, your customers are your fans, or your potential customers are your fans, right? But there is also a very strong bond and link in terms of emotional engagement for fans with a club, especially with a club like Juventus. So how do you manage that? Like, turn them into customers while keeping an emotional link safe with the team?
Yeah, for me, I don't stress maybe enough about that point. Where I want to pivot the conversation is like, what are the new products and service that we should be creating? Like, as long as there's a good value exchange, then there shouldn't be an issue with selling to fans. If the value exchange is there, then it's perfectly fine. And I'd say if you work in football, you're sitting in a really privileged position, because often when people buy from us, they're buying for either a tremendous experience, they're buying for connection, or to feel proud. Those are powerful drivers to buy. And so sometimes I laugh at it, because I said, if you gave to some entrepreneurs the business challenge and you said, okay, let's take a few steps back. You've got a really hardcore group. They will travel the country to come and see you. They'll spend their weekends consuming your content. What sort of products and services can we make for them to give them more utility? I think that there's tons of opportunities that we could come up with, but the business in general is again more focused B2B, and so it doesn't tend to lend that way, because the money sits in broadcast revenue and sponsorship. And so I wouldn't spend too much time talking about selling to fans, and I'd rather pivot the question to, like, how do we build better products and services that our fans are really gonna have joy when they're giving us that money, because I think that there's lots of opportunities.
Exactly, and the key, I guess, in that point is being authentic towards the fan, really keeping the conversation real with them and really hearing from them what they need, and based on that, they move accordingly. Which also links to one of the things you have been mentioning already a couple of times today, like 90%, 94%, I guess you mentioned, of your fan base is outside of Italy. So as we were saying, authenticity is so key. So how can you stay relevant and authentic if your fan base is so spread internationally and culturally?
So that one's, it's difficult. I'd say we've got clear brand values, behaviors, purpose that's rooted in everything we do. And so as a starting point, we've got a really solid brand foundation that we can check ourselves to make sure that we stay authentic to who we are. And so we can speak about our history, our heritage, our Italianity. We can speak about, what makes Juventus true to itself. Where it gets more difficult is certain social media channels, especially one which I won't name, but you guys can probably all guess, which is very short form and trend based, and you need to be able to communicate the language of the platform. Otherwise, you shouldn't be there. And so that's where it gets a bit more tricky on staying true to what's authentically you versus not. And so those are where we have, I'd say, more thorough conversations on like what we would do versus what we don't. And so right now, for instance, on a platform, we know that we could post more content of certain types that would get us higher video views, that would get us higher engagements, and we actively don't do that because it's not aligned to our brand from an authentic point of view. If we wanted to just grow, we would use these clickbait metrics, and we would see the numbers. And so we're actively holding ourselves back because it's not on brand and it's not authentic to who we are.
It's not just like being there because everybody else is there. It's really driven by the decision you make based on your fan base, based on the values you have.
Yeah, well, where I get in trouble is I'm often the tough guy who's saying like, well, we got to keep growing. But then also on the flip side, you got to stay true to who you are, and so that's of utmost importance.
Exactly, and sustainable growth very linked to the values you have, and also towards your fan base. And this is also why I guess Juventus is effectively balancing innovative contents and more traditional contents. Speaking of the innovative initiatives on top of Creator Lab, for example, there is also Team J initiatives. Can you talk us a bit more about it?
Yeah, so Team J, actually maybe I could poll the audience. Like, who knows what Team J is? Could I just see? This is like my focus group test that I can't resist.
If it's working or not, exactly.
Okay, so we got work to do. But you're not the target, I don't think.
No, exactly, maybe not.
So Team J is a kids animated cartoon series. If you were to ask us, what's the most viewed Juventus YouTube video of all time, you would probably guess a Ronaldo period video, and actually you'd be incorrect. It's a cartoon zebra from an animated show called Team J. And so Team J is a cartoon series on YouTube that's done very well. It's a top kids show on the platform. We just reignited the series and launched a second series after a few years of being dormant. And so we're quite bullish on the upside. If you look at clubs from a marketing tactic perspective, most clubs rely on players or performance to engage young audiences. And that's great, and it's also extremely unpredictable because a player can be traded, can get injured, and so what we don't see is a lot of like kids strategies out there. Like, how do we engage a kids audience that's not going to solely rely on players and performance? And if you look at the data on that audience, where YouTube is by far the first platform they go to, Team J is a perfect strategy against a 5 to 9 year old audience that's going to select its club for the first time, and it's a show based on values, and so it's not even a football related show. It's there to communicate all sorts of different positive values for kids and parents, and so with Team J, it's I'd say something that we've recently reinvested in, and we see a lot of opportunity there.
It's a very interesting one because it's also part of a larger kind of community and new fan base building efforts that you're putting, right?
Yeah, and it's for us, it's a pretty international product. I mean, most of the views so far are coming from, the top country is the United States. It's mostly outside of Italy from a views perspective, but we've got work to do clearly here on it, and so that gives me some extra drive. But it's a new product. I think your first point though is like, how do you balance this like a new innovation and then also with tradition?
Yeah.
And I'd say that one we're constantly monitoring. I mean, we can't lose sight of the fact that at our core we're a football club, and so what I'd say first and foremost is if the core falls down, then everything else does too, and so we make sure to respect that. If we're playing a match or a match day -1 or +1, I mean, we're very respectful about like what the focus is, but at the same time, we see the need to innovate to stand out in this like just very cluttered media environment. And Team J is a new strategy that we've got that we're testing out.
Exactly, which links also to one of the first questions we had today. Like it's kind of an entertainment move, like a move you made to enter the entertainment arena rather than the traditional sports one, right? So it's very interesting. And also, as in Juventus, I know that you are putting very high effort and attention towards a positive impact in general in community building. So you are heavily focused on mental health, for example, diversity, inclusion. It's interesting to hear how this fits into your wider marketing strategy, how you're treating it.
Sure. So I'd say on the topics like diversity and inclusion, mental health, first it's not a marketing strategy. It's a total company.
Yeah.
It aligns to the values and behaviors that we've set out, and so it's not something that, for instance, marketing would go solo on without the support of the team internally that works on ESG, for instance. I guess our feeling is that football, because we discussed earlier, it crosses culture, that football can have a lot of impact in the world. And Juventus, whether we want it or like it or not, we can do the same. And so some would say, well, why get involved in those things? Like, focus on the core product in football. But we're already crossed over into culture. And so our feeling is we've got an obligation as a company to look to address some of those societal concerns like diversity, inclusion, mental health. And so right now we're really focused on like pragmatic ways that we can try to solve for some of those things. Racism in the stadium was one that we've really pushed on. Our women's team and supporting the efforts there to grow the sport. We recently partnered with TikTok to help us really push the women's movement and give more visibility to our women's team. If we look at mental health, which is worldwide, a lot of folks talk about young people being like the most connected and the most lonely, because and mental health being a big issue with that audience. And so we have done several podcasts and content with our players across all teams to really try to reduce the negative connotations that come around the words mental health. Like, it's okay to talk about it, and actually our players wouldn't be successful on the pitch if they weren't mentally strong. And so that's an important thing to talk about. In 2 weeks' time, we announced we're launching a Fagioli documentary on Amazon Prime, which is, again, another example of not a sensationalization of a player, but really a player that had a tough time, and a company that has an opportunity to tell a really important story to try to educate a broader population on the risks that can come along with poor mental health and gambling. And so that's another important one that's coming out in a couple weeks that we hope can be helpful in driving awareness for like a real societal issue.
That's very important. No, thanks for raising the point. And yeah, briefly before, you mentioned about the fact that essentially mainly the vast majority of your contents, also based on performance, are kind of based on unpredictability, because it's based on sports results, performance. So it's a little bit tough to navigate into this ecosystem. So my question is, how do you balance, how do you try to keep your strategy in a long-term vision in such a short-term and unpredictable scenario and industry like the sports one?
It's tough. I mean, the sports business is, as you said, it's inherently pressured to think and act more short-term. There's a lot of levers that push clubs towards winning because of relegation and promotion. And so every year you start over and the score is 0 again. And so there's not really an easy answer to that, but I'd say the situation that clubs find themselves in is, from a short-term perspective, they'll take a risk on, say, a new midfielder and make that decision really fast. But then when it comes into investing into data infrastructure or a new CRM or a new fan product, they're very conservative. And so I think that example underlines the nature of the football industry at the moment. And I think we do need to focus more on how we plan for the long term in general. But it's very, very difficult in the, I'd say, macroeconomic environment that we're in. For us, from a content perspective, we try our best, again, to respect game day and like those short-term moments in the calendar. But we also have to plan for the year. And so often that means publishing something on a day that's not the best to publish it on. If your goal as a sports club is to get 100% perfect score on every piece of content that you put out there, then you're not going to post any content. And so, I mean, you have to kind of also be okay with thresholds of sentiment analysis, because certainly for us, it's near impossible to please everybody all the time. And so we do our best to appease as much as possible.
So, Mike, I guess during this session we touched a lot of very fascinating topics. So as we wrap up, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your behind-the-scene experience of what we see every day coming from Juventus. It's been great. So thank you once again for being here with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone. So we are at the end of this session, and have a nice afternoon and rest of the festival. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.